Oh, kia ora anō, kia orana. Welcome back to the 6th episode of our pretty dodgy panel, talking about all things to do with teaching and learning. And our topic for today, we've chosen to speak about post-election. So all about education. The panel, I've invited the panel to share their thoughts, views, and expectations perhaps around the next 3 years. We've got a returning government, of course, with a heavy Labour government, a landslide election, and also keeping the same Minister of Education, so Chris Hipkins. Yeah, let's start off with introductions. This is the first time we've had the full panel because it's been a crazy year. We'll go with you, Bruce. Would you like to start? We'll go around and do introductions and then we'll get into it.
Kia ora ana koutou, Bruce George from Literacy at Aotearoa, National Office in Auckland, and it's a very wet day up here.
Kia ora. Riki, let's go to you.
He uri tēnei no whatui apiri kahununu hoki, he Kaiārahi mo te Atakura ki te paemātauranga o te Aowhanui, called Riki Anderson tēnei. I'm in Wairarapa, Masterton, and it's really muggy. I'm really hot. I'm not ready for this mugginess. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Riki. Aiono.
Mahalo soifua everyone. I'm Aiono Manu Faaea, Senior Pasifika Manager at the Manukau Institute of Technology, and it's overcast and pretty drizzly up here in Auckland, Tamaki Makaurau, but it's good to be here this afternoon.
Mahalo, whawhetai. Te Ataahia.
Kia ora tātou, ko te Ataahia Hurihanganui, te ingoa kai konei au ki Wairarapa. I'm like Riki, I'm very hot and bothered today, but I'm excited to be back on this panel, particularly for this theme, our elections commentary. Lovely to be back in between you all. I am here representing Reorua Limited, my business, and of course Ace Aotearoa as one of the board members. Tēnā tātou.
Tēnā koe. Jennifer.
Oh, I just have to fan myself. It's so hot down south. Kia ora koutou, ko Jennifer Leahy, and I'm down south in Aotearoa in Christchurch, and it is 27 degrees. 27, it's like November and it's 27, wow. So like you in the Wairarapa, yeah, it's hot and sticky. And I'm here to represent Aotearoa today, and great to see you all be back again for this, the penultimate one, is it, for the year?
Yeah, ai. Kia ora, Jennifer. Kia ora na tātou katoa toa, toku ingoa, ko Annalise Inoka Robertson, no kuki rani mai au. I am the Professional Development and Networks Manager at Ace Aotearoa, and very grateful and honoured to be hosting this, our pretty dodgy panel. I must always give tribute to why we branded the series Pretty Dodgy to Better Dodgy, and we do have the man himself with us, Bruce, because you know Bruce is really cheeky, so he comes up with these gems, and every time he does, I grab them and I say thank you, we'll use that, and that'll be the title for our panel, but also around teaching. So I'm looking forward to today's discussion post-election, and really wanted to just open it up to see who would like to start. Our kōrero. Anyone? Post-election. How are we feeling? Should we do a how are we feeling about the elections, the New Zealand elections in Aotearoa? Were you surprised? No? No?
Oh, I'll start. I was working for the Electoral Commission, so I couldn't say anything for a long time. I did some part-time work training the election day staff in Christchurch Central. So I had to stop all my allegiances with any political parties, sorry. And that was a bit tricky. So I'm very happy to say that I'm very pleased with the result. I think it's pretty incredible that there's such a landslide. And what's even better is the way that Jacinda Ardern has gone on to actually form her cabinet with such diversity. I think, I feel very proud to be in a country where Jacinda has appointed some fabulous people to work with her closely. And I think that's all good for us in education. They're modelling in cabinet, they're modelling ways of working, the way Jacinda collaborated with the Greens and invited them in when she didn't have to, I think is a fabulous way of modelling that each of us can, or for me, certainly, you know, enjoy as part of my own practice and education. So sometimes collaborate with those that are tricky to work with or maybe different to work with, but in the end, you know, give great results and great for obviously the learners in my instance, but also for Jacinda, for her, you know, for her country, people in New Zealand, the people that she represents. So yeah, I'm really excited about it. I'm really thrilled. My sister is closely related to the Māori Party and strong allegiance with them, and her brother-in-law is the chair, Shay Wilson, and so for me, I'm really thrilled for her. She worked for a long time in Parliament with Aotearoa, and so I saw her the next day after the Māori Party representative was elected, and they were so excited and so happy, and I just think that's fabulous for such a strong group in New Zealand who are supporting people from, you know, supporting their candidate to represent Māori too. So there's lots of things I think that now I can speak. I have just spoken about how proud I am that we have such a great Parliament now, and look forward to the future for all of us. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Jennifer. Thank you for starting us off. Who would like to?
Yeah, I'll tell you, Jennifer. I think it's good that we've got, you know, a stable government, a more left government, and interesting, you know, National lost quite a bit. New Zealand First have gone, and it was really good to see the Māori Party come back in, you know. So I like the diversity in the Labour government, and I like the Greens there too. So hopefully, you know, those are good signs, but we don't want to go back to the old Labour national government that you couldn't tell the difference between. So yeah, I think, you know, we definitely have a good start. It's just seeing how all that theory goes into practice.
Kia ora, Bruce.
No quotes either, so that's good.
Very safe. Who wants to go next?
I'll go next. Your question was how you feeling. I'm feeling quite relieved, actually. There were a lot of conversations that were getting quite heavy, I think, from a spiritual nature in the lead up to election night, and I don't think it was a surprising result. I think it was a result most New Zealanders were expecting, despite where you sit on the spectrum. I was excited, like Jennifer and Bruce, to see the diversity, but not just in the Labour Party, to see the diversity in government. And actually, I don't think that's anything more than a true reflection and representation of who we are as New Zealanders, to be honest. I was quite excited to see the young Chloe come through. She's only 26 years old. She's younger than me. Quite amazing and inspiring young lady. And I, you know, put credit into her and her party for the support that they gave someone so young to come through. She actually reminds me of a young Jacinda. We have, you know, Tuiono, who's in there, Kuki Airene, who speaks fluent te reo Māori. I know about 40% of our Green Party are Takatapui. There are a lot more chocolate faces in there than ever before, which is really beautiful. And one of my leading ladies in all things, Nanaia Mahuta, to have been given the privilege of leading us and guiding us through with our foreign affairs and all of her portfolios, actually. Beautiful, you know, strong wahine Māori with her whakapapa on display for the world to see. I just think it's you know, it's a really exciting time for Māori as well. Rawiri Waititi, justly, Jennifer, I agree. I think he ran an important and very successful campaign for Wairariki. For Wairarapa too, Riki, we had some success here in terms of getting our Labour member through to support you know, government as well. So we've now got that direct connection in there. And of course, Chris Hipkins for ACE. I think we've commented before in previous panels that, you know, we were just starting to get the ball rolling. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how that all pans out. And I'm quite hopeful that the momentum that had already started with this government will continue with the, you know, the length of time that has been extended to them. So here's hoping it's a good one for ACE. We totally deserve it. I'm just looking forward to all of those voices coming together and working hard for our people.
Kia ora. Aiono.
Yeah, I think everyone's, you know, pretty much shared similar sentiments to what I've had, things in terms of post-election news. I guess for me, a point of difference might be, I'm interested to see like what, you know, Ataahia has talked about, whether they will continue the momentum with what they've started. And, you know, whether, you know, I'm interested in how the Minister of COVID-19 is going to be working across with other ministers to make sure that, you know, the health and well-being of all New Zealanders is taken into account, and to what extent we'll be able to see that momentum, you know, moving forward. Yeah, so I guess for me, it's just a wait and see game, and totally thrilled that Te Anau Tuiono has come through as a Green MP from Palmerston North and Papaioa. So looking forward to seeing him do some real work in that climate change space, as he's been a champion in that area for quite some time. So yeah, I'm just looking forward to those who are new to the game to really make a mark and to really bring us along with them for the ride. So looking forward to it.
Malo, Riki.
Kia ora. I'm probably not as politically savvy as some of our other panel guests, but yeah, I agree with a lot of what's being talked about. I guess for me, where I started getting really excited and a little bit emotional about things was in the build up to it. So for me and my community in whānau, I just seen a real difference in like whānau Māori. The voice was, we were all debating and having good dialogue around how we're going to vote and everything in a way that I haven't seen yet in my lifetime. So I found really awesome. And starting to see some of our rangatahi really start to push and challenge us around how we're voting and why we're voting and all of that kind of thing was really awesome. Seeing lots of Māori at the voting polls again, I got a little bit emo about, because it was just such a stark difference. So I thought it was beautiful to see. I guess where I've landed is, for me, I'm also really happy about this iteration of the Māori Party and what they've achieved in a really short amount of time. Heather Toe Skipworth, our candidate for Aotearoa Rāwhiti, got to spend some time with her in a noho space, and her kōrero was just beautiful. So yeah, that was very generative. And yeah, I guess I'm stoked about the results, but you know, when things are really good, it's the best time to start sort of unpicking and critiquing around things. And I guess not the fear for me, but I do think that it's important that our government is held accountable. And I just hope that there is enough negotiated outcome so that there are opposing sides sort of debating and doing that dialogue, that wānanga, to get to the truth and to get to a good outcome. So yeah, I guess that's where I've landed, if that makes sense. Yeah, kia ora.
It definitely makes sense, Riki. And I agree with you. I think this has definitely been an election that I've enjoyed watching, leading into, probably the most engaging that I've ever seen, and really pleased with the voter turnout. So, you know, I always take it back to our learners, our learning communities, colleagues who have often been, you know, disheartened by the process and lost faith in a system that hasn't worked or hasn't served. But it was really empowering, I guess, to see the reflection of the voter turnout and the results that we have. And also appreciate your comments and summary of the diversity of Parliament. It is chocolate brown now, and really, I think for me, the day before the announcement of the ministerial portfolios. I was on another panel and I was asked what my expectation was, what I thought about it. And for me, it was to show the commitment to Māori and Pacific, which would have been reflected in the appointments through the portfolios. And so I was, again, very grateful to see that representation and not just looking in education, but looking across, these are significant portfolios as well. And Nanaio, of course, for me, it's not just about our whānau here, it's also about our whānau in Te Moana Nui a Kiwa. So I'm excited to see what the next 3 years brings. I'm all about the action and seeing how education works with other sectors, government sectors, collectively. Because I think, for all of us, we do want to see something make a difference. And COVID-19 has really been a catalyst for action, definitely with the Labour government. But I think in general, as a country, we're all waiting to see what happens. We want to see the action. And I think the announcement of those portfolios was definitely a step in the direction of meeting people's expectations as well. So, where to from here, I guess, around our kōrero? Do you have expectations? What are you expecting in the next 3 years? I mean, we have Polytechs here, MIT, Riki, where you're based as well. And you're part of an amalgamation of polytechnics. How's that going for you guys?
So sort of picking up on what Te Ataahia was talking about, I am relieved that Chris Hipkins has gotten through, his party's gotten through, so that we can see that work continue. And just from a really sort of low level, ground level, I'm really seeing the accountability on the ITP sector heat up in a way that I've never seen it before. I'm trying to think of a scenario to sort of, or an analogy to summarize it, but the accountability is already happening. And something beautiful that I'm seeing on the ground floor is that some of our marginalised voices, so our Indigenous staff, our, tangata moana, or our takatapui staff, a lot of our marginalised voices are starting to speak up because there is accountability now, and it feels like our voices are not only valued, but are being asked for on people outside of directly where we work. So yeah, I guess for me, I'm still optimistic, but I'm very excited, and it does feel like, that we're on the edge of some big shifts. I think too, because my kind of vision is that, there'll just be a lot more collectivity, and ultimately, everyone will be parts of a village, and all of the village collaborates, and everyone has their area of strength, and instead of all competing against each other, there doesn't need to be just UCOL. UCOL needs to collaborate with the village needs to collaborate with UCOL, for instance. So yeah, my vision is that there is lots more accountability, and it seems to be heating up, and I think we're going to land somewhere pretty exciting. Yeah. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Riki. It's good to hear. Aiono, is it the same where you are?
Yeah, definitely. I think because, we've been told that, the full integration of things won't kick in until probably 2022. So, moving into next year is quite critical, because it's where we start to see, integration start to hopefully move across and have greater collaboration, as Riki referred to, across, the entire Institute of Te Pukenga. But I think there still needs to be some support around our leaders and staff, right across, across all the levels around change management. I think in this kind of real drastic transformational change, there's a lot of people, even with COVID in play, higher levels of anxiety around just job security and not knowing where things are going. And also with our students that are coming through, we're actually preparing them for jobs that there's skills shortage in there, and to some extent they might not necessarily be taking jobs that they want to do, but go for jobs that are actually available so that they can continue to work and support their whānau and ainga and family and āno. So it's really quite daunting, I think, for lots of our Māori and Pasifika families to come to terms with, you know, putting food on the table, leaving school to provide for their families. And, you know, that's the new reality. You know, I personally hate to use that phrase, the new normal, because for me, as a person born in Aotearoa, there's no such thing as normal to me, because I've always had to constantly adapt and change and conform to whoever has the power in the room that I happen to be in. So being really critically reflective and open and surrounding yourself with the right people who can help to support you through that change is really important. Just think we just need to be a lot kinder to each other and reach out. If you can see people struggling, reach out to them and make sure that everyone's okay.
Aiono. Ataahia, your thoughts?
I suppose two things that have come up for me hearing both Aiono and Riki speak. The first one is really continuing Riki's dialogue around the engagement that we saw leading up to elections. I think it's actually really critical for us as a community in Aotearoa to continue that, you know, enhancing the voice of those who are, you know, up and coming voices for the next elections. I was really fortunate this time round to have my kids who were old enough to engage in conversations. So we were sitting around the dinner table actually talking about politics as if it was part of us and not completely disconnected to who we are and how we function in the everyday. And I think that's a really important thing to think about. I think COVID taught us how to better connect with one another, have open channels of communication with, like Riki said, our whānau, those who are most dearest to us. And I think that is one thing we as ACE practitioners can maybe think about. I know from a higher level with our board strategy, we're starting to talk about, okay, now that people are engaged and we know that we can start to, you know, mold and form ideas into, say, reality or practical outcomes. How are we supporting that? How are we making the most of the powers that be, if you like? And then, of course, the other thing that came up for me was, like Aiono said again through COVID, being really mindful of the bigger picture stuff. You know, we are still really lucky here in Aotearoa during this period of time that we can have these conversations and we can gather and have that kind of that mass discussion, because I know that actually in many parts of the world right now, they're in survival mode, you know, literally in survival mode. Yeah, so it's going to be a tough time, I think, and I really loved Aiono's quote about being kind. I think aroha and manaakitanga is going to really be at the forefront of everything that we do. One other thing I just wanted to mention, I forgot to mention earlier, that was quite interesting, and the effects, I suppose, of the elections to Wairarapa is one of our MPs standing in Mana was unsuccessful in her election campaign. She was a national MP and she actually has become the general manager of our local iwi rangitane, started this week. So we now have someone with that amazing experience leading our iwi through the next stages, and I think that in itself is actually quite important for Wairarapa. I know other regions are going to have new leaders as well, so I'm excited as well to see it. I just again hope that those leaders, despite their backgrounds and their kind of political sway, I'm hoping that they are always putting manaakitanga and aroha at the forefront. You know, we as ACE practitioners know that that is the key. That is the key to developing us as a people.
Yeah. Bruce, would you like to chime in?
Yeah, my thing, I'm really grateful is I voted with my daughter this time. So it's the first time she voted. She's in the Māori electorate, so our conversations were interesting, and I don't think I was having those conversations with my dad or my mum when I was 20. Just that, you know, you got to vote Labour, and that was us. So yeah, this time was interesting, and I think there's a much more of a younger voice out there, and they're making a presence. So I think that's really cool. And I think just someone mentioned change, and there's a thing about theory of change in terms of preparing ourselves to be more resilient, coping with all these barriers that come up with us, which tend to be mainly for Māori and Pacific immigrants, low socioeconomics, tend to have a lot more barriers that they have to get over. And the thing about this theory of change, if we see that our parents have those skills are transferred into our children, and then our children have a much better way of coping with life. And just, you know, COVID has taught us lots of things, and it's good that a government has come through that the well-being of the people is more important than the economy. So, you know, I think those are good things in terms of what we do. But for Māori and Pacific, I think, you know, hard times, we always have hard times, so there's not much difference, you know, from my reality looking around. You know, we're still down the bottom, all those sort of things. And I think just COVID has made people realise that in the larger group, you know, what those real aspects of life is, you know, about family, looking after each other, taking care of your neighbours, all those sort of things. And I think, you know, that's been a good eye-opener for me, and hopefully that'll follow through with government policies that are going to come through, our education. I did see that Te Pukenga, and it's lovely words, but once again, it's what follows through. And like Riki mentioned, that accountability. And I think, you know, in education, we have to be really accountable, especially educators, institutions. And, you know, I'm a bit wary that governments come back on those no fees, because once again, you know, if we're paying for education, it hurts Māori and Pacific, you know. That's why we have scholarships and all those sort of things. And I think once we get rid of scholarships, you know, then we can talk about the fees. But yeah, it just seems some of the same, but hopefully we can be more reflective of what we've gone through this year. And that's me.
Kia ora, Bruce. Thank you. Jennifer.
Look, I guess a lot to follow on with there, and a lot I agree with all of what you've been saying too about accountability, about aroha and kindness and change, and also the impact of the rangatahi sort of sharing more openly than I ever was or noticed about their voting preferences. And for my own daughter, she struggled when my father at 87 couldn't tell her one reason why he was voting for the candidate he voted for. And I guess I'm used to that, but she was like aghast, like, why can't he say why he's voting for that man? It's like, but she, you know, of course, is very principled at 23 about why she is voting and who she votes for. But I did like that, and I say with my niece, you know, open Facebook post about who she's voting for. It's like, wow, nothing I've seen from my generation. So that's really encouraging. What else is encouraging is the accountability, and I've heard from people here at Aotearoa here that, you know, they feel that if people are prepared to work with Māori and Pacific learners to upskill and focus on them, as Te Pukenga has, you know, suggested, then they'll be out. Now, I don't know how true that is. Maybe it's just kind of an exaggeration of what they've heard, but I was really impressed with that. They said they were really excited. The focus Te Pukenga has on working specifically as the TEC wants us to, and prioritising learners who are Māori and Pacific. And so that will be, yeah, I think that will be great if that continues. And that's what I like about having a stable government, if we can continue on with the good relationships and the good work so far. And thinking about, you know, our learners. So I am, though, worried about the impact of COVID, and I have referred again to Te Mana Akonga, the National Māori Tertiary Students Association report on the impacts of COVID on Māori university students. And, you know, there's some really sad statistics there about well-being and about students really feeling negative about their engagement, feeling disconnected, finding it difficult, finding financial stress. 1 in 4 students didn't have access to strong, reliable Wi-Fi or internet for online learning. 1 in 2 students reported not having good communication about how their studies would progress. And they're worried about their progress, and 51.9% didn't feel valued as a student by their university. And I know they're going to the Pacific Students Association and replicate or do a similar research as well, but I guess those stats still worry me about that tertiary education sector. I mean, I know ACE practitioners are fantastic at channeling manaakitanga and aroha into every aspect of their teaching with their learners, but there's still lots of tertiary educators I feel that aren't really caring about their learners enough. I just see them as objects that they deliver to and don't look further into their well-being and their pastoral care. So all of those things that I think ACE epitomises, I think would be great to continue working wider into the tertiary sector, and we keep on going with what we've achieved so far.
Kia ora, Jennifer. I guess the question that I have now is, what does 2021 look like for each of you? And the feeling that we're getting through the adult community education sector and actually tertiary sector wide is that people have really missed the face-to-face, being with others, being with people, and the well-being, as you say, Jennifer, that's really been smashed big time. And we're in November, people are looking forward to finishing the end of the year, and still to some degree with uncertainty about what the future holds. And people are tired as well. So I guess, yes, that is great. We've got our government. We don't have to start from scratch. We don't have to develop new strategies. We're moving in with that level of certainty. But I'm really interested in your thoughts, perspectives, or even future gazing, what 2021 looks like for you. Now, we've come out of a year of being online. Irony is, here we are, online again. And next year in February, we've got our adult community education hui whānau, and it will be 14 years of holding this unique event, which is exclusively for Māori and Pacific, working across tertiary, and not just tertiary. We're getting people from everywhere and anywhere who identify that part of what they do, whether they're paid or not, is about providing learning services to their whānau, to their community. And it's probably the biggest registration turnout that we've ever had. I think we might hit 200, but I won't say that too loud because Ataahia is on our board. And everyone's freaking out. How are you going to manage that? Well, you know, go hard or go home. Our whānau have been locked up. And some of us are used to being locked up, but we've been locked up and we need to get out.
And we're heading to the coast.
And we need
the sea air.
That's right. We need to reconnect. We need to be with each other. And we definitely need to have our wairua lifted. So, you know, that, and I'm just sharing that just as a bird's eye view, that's definitely the feeling that we're getting from the teaching workforce in tertiary education. That we've, you know, people have worked really, really hard, both personally and professionally, and moving into 2021. I'm pleased that hui whānau has had such a great response, and looking forward to that. But beyond that, you know, when our whānau leave the coast, te tai rā whiti, and they go back to their learning organisations and communities, what does that look like for you? Or what are you seeing with some of the changes that are happening or not happening? But, you know, there is uncertainty out there. So who wants
those
to kick that
numbers,
off?
I'll kick us off. Those numbers are really exciting. I didn't know that until this moment. So wow, we got a lot of work to do. Yeah, no, I think that's a fair reflection, Anna. I've seen it in both community ed and in education within the corporate spaces that I work. There's definitely a heavy exhaustion on us right now, but I honestly think that we're a little bit more mindful and reflective now. So going into the new year, we're going to be a bit more prepared to understand if we put well-being at the forefront, the economy will naturally flourish, because if we're all well, we are a bit more productive. I think that's what I've seen. If I kind of peel back the layers and look at my own personal situation and experience through COVID, especially, or through the lockdown of COVID, because may we not forget that COVID is still rampant, you know, it's still very much present around the world. But through that lockdown period, I think in our whare and our whānau, we understood that a lot of the habits that we had gotten ourselves into were the habit of probably putting too much focus and emphasis on the economy, and well-being was coming second, if not even a priority. And so because of that balance, we found ourselves in the challenges that we did. We've come through that part, and we've learned as a whānau to put wellness first and our well-being first. Naturally, we are becoming productive, more productive than ever, you know, in the work that we do. You know, when we're at mahi, we're at mahi, and when we're at home, we're at home. And the other thing that I've noticed, kind of, again, looking at the next layer in our workplaces, we've again honoured well-being. And so that means being more flexible with our time, with the way that we work. What does next year look like for me as an ACE practitioner? Well, for me, it's about honouring maybe mixed learning delivery. How can we get a nice balance and offer different options to different people? Because we, you know, about this time last year, I was still trying to figure out what Zoom meant. You know, what is this Zoom thing everyone keeps talking about? And now I'm completely competent in it. You know, it doesn't take long. We've learned new things, and I think we're probably going to be better at understanding how all of these different kind of molds and forms and functions work together. And just lastly, I go back to what Jennifer was saying about our other tertiary providers. Yeah, I honestly think this is an opportunity for ACE to lead. You know, for a very long time, we've looked at universities in a very different light to ACE, and we've kind of almost held, you know, universities up here for different reasons. Probably not us. I'm preaching to the converted. But if I was to be really honest, I think this is a really good opportunity for ACE to lead how we see 2021 and how we treat one another, and how we, you know, strategically place our leadership and our operations teams in the way that we do, and in particular with the way we're teaching and providing learning to participants and giving them the respect that they deserve. I know that universities are under the pump, they're under a lot of stress at the moment. They've certainly lost a lot of money without that, you know, that overseas input. So I really do think they're going to be looking at us next year. We're going to be under the spotlight, and I just know we're gonna smash it.
Kia ora, Ataahia. That's pressure. Better get cracking on that policy work. But I absolutely agree with you. I think we've always had the liberty of doing what we do, because, you know, and often because we haven't had to answer to funding mechanisms because we haven't been funded. But it is about how we can share that learning and way of operating as a learning organisation to provide some leadership in this space. Thank you. Aiono, your thoughts? How's 2021 looking for you and MIT?
I think at MIT we'll just be looking to really work closely with Unitec, because we will be the Tamaki Makaurau base for vocational education. So, you know, we're still, where I work out of in the Pasifika Development Office, there is also a Pasifika equivalent at Unitec. So we've met with them a couple of times. We've got another meeting due in a couple of weeks just to develop that whakawhanaungatanga and get a real sense of seeing what our strengths are and how we can bolster that together as a collective. Because, you know, if you're governed by the same board, you're no longer competing, you're collaborating. So that's what I was referring to before about being thrust out of something that they've been familiar with for so long, and now being forced to look at, this is how you're going to operate from now on. And, you know, teaching people how to do that can be quite challenging. On a personal note, I think it's still continuing to have that sense of resilience. I think being resilient as a Pacific person is something that has been ingrained and inherent for quite some time, you know, growing up in our communities. And as Ataahia mentioned before, you know, where ACE has opportunity to lead in this space, you know, and she's absolutely right, you know, universities are under the pump and they will be looking to where all the money has come through, which is in this sector, and thinking about how they too can be a part of that as well. So you're going to see some greater collaborations across to try and see if we can work together alongside them, as well as within our own Te Pūkenga area as well. So everything is kind of up in the air still. Lots of hui, got to get the doi under control. Yeah, so it's exciting for me, because I think I'm quite used to, you know, working in a plane that we're building at the same time as we're flying. So I think if you're used to that kind of, you know, that kind of change, and you're used to things kind of moving, then you'll be quite comfortable in the uncomfortable. So I guess it's helping, from my perspective, others who may be struggling, and kind of making sure that they're okay, and kind of teaching them the you know, the tricks of the trade around how to be safe in the workplace, but also kind of elicit your own strengths and success out of your role if you want to go into other spaces as well. So, you know, championing staff development is important as well.
Malo, Aiono. I love the plane analogy. Very true though. Riki, is it the same for you, UCOL?
Look, I've been making little notes just to kind of keep track of my whakaaro. So hopefully this kind of ends up in a place of sense. So I think for me, a big part of my kōrero at the moment has been around kaimahi, whether they're teachers or not teachers, whatever, is making sure that we are taking care of ourselves first and foremost. So sometimes for me personally, being Kaiārahi te Atakura, I can lead into feeling like, you know, it's just constant fighting for Māori, for marginalised, and that can start weighing heavy. But part of what I've been doing is trying to build a bit more of collectivity and connectivity. So reaching out to mentors, to potential tōkana. I mean, even Te Ataahia, any time I get to spend with her is very generative. Another exemplar is I have reached out to a principal of a high school in Manu, I think, Homai School, Rosenia Wikaira, and she's doing a lot of similar work to myself. So just surrounding myself with some peers just to make sure that I'm the best Kaiārahi te Atakura that I can be for my campus. So 2021 for us, and I'm going to paraphrase my team member here, Faaea-Semeatu. So she talks a lot about, her vision is that at UCOL Wairarapa, that we're creating, or we're facilitating or producing creators, not consumers. So you know, people who have the ability to problem solve, and you know, if X, Y, or Z doesn't exist in the Wairarapa, then how are you going to create that for you? And I find that a really empowering place to sort of start from. So making sure that we're growing the Wairarapa for the Wairarapa, so building capability, sustainability, all that kind of beautiful stuff. And I think we're seeing small collaborations that are really exciting happening. So UCOL Limited, as they're now called, or we are now called, are collaborating with people like, just recently we've created a new program in collaboration with Pukaha and Rangitane. So it's a kaitiaki program around protecting you know, the environment. So there's lots of things like that that are starting to pop off. another exemplar is their government created a quick, fast response to COVID and have started short taster courses within the primary industry at what was previously known as Tahi in collaboration with UCOL. So that was UCOL and the MPI. That is another area that's just growing really quickly. And so I see 2021 for me being around kōrero. So we all know that the solutions to our students and our communities, our Indigenous communities, that the solutions lie within them, their knowledge and their needs. So making sure that we're not just doing to people, that we're actually talking and responding to people, providing things that is actually needed, you know, so how things look in the Wairarapa must be different to other regions because we're all in different contexts. So that's what I'm really excited about with the potential of Te Pūkenga, is that it's allowing us to be much more responsive than we ever have been before. So yeah, next year, lots of kōrero, lots of data, and truly authentically responding to that data. Yeah, I think, yeah, and building collectivity and also collective efficacy. So yeah, it's going to be a big one. I'm tired just talking about it right now, but very excited. Yeah.
Aotearoa, Riki. No, thank you. I love that, the collectivism. And I agree. I think what I'm hearing from both yourself and Aiono through the amalgamation process is the opportunity for working genuinely collaboratively. And from the community base, you know, we very much hope that we're a part of that collaboration.
So quickly add in, so the course that we're putting out, Pukaha, was you know, essentially gifted it to us by NNIT in the South Island, and you know, they kind of said, look, we could jump in and do this and make it our co-lab, but Wairarapa has UCOL, so already we're seeing, you know, the power shifts, you know, that power sharing and that sort of sense of ako. Yeah, anyway, mute.
Yep, that's the village, eh? And we've talked a lot about localizing learning as well. And I guess that's been as a result of COVID-19 and being in lockdown, that really genuinely and sincerely looking at localizing learning, making it accessible. You know, where we're based, we've got libraries, we've got community spaces and venues who are seeing themselves as more than just being a property management service to community, but actually seeing themselves as places of learning, and how they can work collectively to provide better access, I guess, to these opportunities. So it's really nice to hear that that's happening in the IT space, and certainly has been happening in community for a long time. Bruce, how's your next year looking?
I'll have a job for another 12 months, so that's really good.
And that's fact. No. It's a reality.
No, it is. You know, I think I was very privileged to be working through lockdown and things like that. So I think, you know, the way we support learning from this and next year on is, you know, is a good reflection on what we do. You know, how do we support our most vulnerable? You know, there's a lot of kōrero in terms of re-imaging vocational learning, which I just read over the last couple of days, and it's some really good stuff. You know, making learning relevant to community and local industry. You know, so having those connections, quality learning and support. You know, and I think that support is really important. Pastoral care has a huge impact on a learner. You know, what happens outside the classroom or outside the learning environment has more impact for that person than what happens inside. I mean, inside can actually bring lots of rewards, but real life is outside. So those things, flexible learning in terms of online, face-to-face. I mean, we love face-to-face. Online can complement that. Those micro-credentials, digital badges, making learning smaller chunks, so our learners are getting rewarded quicker rather than rewarded with a receipt at the end of 3 years that you're in debt for 30,000. Having national standards, I think those are all good. They're all good in terms of how you implement them, you know, so I think those are all good. My worry is, you know, is rebranding going to change our practice? Our system is really monocultural in the mainstream, so, you know, how do we address that? And so I think there's those things, you know, there's a lot to get excited about, but to me, I notice the things that are missing, and there's not much in the Pacific arena in this new re-imaging vocational learning. I see Māori are there, and that's really good. But yeah, I think looking at where things are absent or where things are not there, you have to question that. So no, I think, you know, definitely good times next year, but I think, you know, we still have to be critical and keep on pushing those limits. And that's me.
Kia ora, Bruce. Thank you. Jennifer.
Well, the last word, I think, isn't it? We nearly,
Yeah,
nearly out of time, but I just want to talk about what everyone has said. Fantastic. I mean, Aotearoa, of course, are trying in 2021 to work with tertiary education providers to be the best they can for their learners, like we do, but taking in mind all of your kōrero about where people are at and the challenges of COVID. I think there's some good things, and I'll just follow on from you, Bruce, and share something, because I think that you were saying that you were, you know, concerned that there were not opportunities for Pacific engagement. Can you see that there? Yeah, Introduction to Pacific Cultural Centeredness Pathway. Yep, you can see that, yeah. So I'll just start with that one of the things we're trialling at UCOL is the need or interest for people to learn more about what's happening for Pasifika learners, just as they are around Māori cultural capability too. So that's heartening for Aotearoa, and to be able to offer these at quite a low rate. Yeah, that's a 50 per person low rate. Which is really great, and you can see the topics that are covered there from UCOL through to Akaunataina, to Whare Tawhawha, lots of 1 hour sessions. So we're trying to work with what a lot of you are saying is around the need, around the interest and engagement in things that are online, but also taking in mind what you're saying, Annalise, too, that a lot of practitioners are really keen to meet face-to-face. And so hopefully, like Aotearoa, I can keep pushing that with Aotearoa around that opportunity to feel that support, to really feel that in these days, people can feel that what they're doing is supported by that opportunity to get together, and they're reconnecting again with the things that they love most about teaching, about working with learners and learning for themselves in a face-to-face context. I really like what you said, Aiono, about being comfortable in the uncomfortable. I think that's so cool. And I also love how ACE has led how we treat people. And certainly I know for me, bringing through some of those experiences that I've gained from ACE into the UCOL world has been really valuable. All people have said that. So we continue in UCOL to really enjoy that relationship that we have with ACE Aotearoa and and all of you. So kia ora, thank you.
Kia ora, Jennifer. Thank you. Great way to sum up our conversation today post-election. What I definitely got from each of you is that we're feeling secure because it's a government that we know, they're people that we know, and faces that we feel excited about and seeing them in positions. But I'm definitely wanting. I guess if Chris Hipkins was here, what I would say to him is really to look at that investment model in terms of looking at the infrastructure of education right across the motu, right across everywhere where it happens, and not just in the formal institutions, but looking at community. And I know that this is a government that has raised the priority and visibility of community, and not just in education, but in terms of how community has modelled an effective response to a pandemic in COVID-19. You know, when we got locked up, it was the community, and all of us are part of that community. So that's probably what I would say to Chris Hipkins, and keeping each other and our government accountable. As Bruce said, you know, we don't want to be complacent around education policies, and looking how it impacts on us. So I think, you know, that's part of the system, is that we're in it, but we still have a lot of work to do, and not having complacency for any of us, so that our learners are better off, because, you know, pastoral care is not a new thing for some of us, but it is a new thing for others, and it applies to everyone, including the workforce and tertiary education. So thank you, each of you, for sharing your thoughts on the post-election, and take care of yourselves. We've got one more panel. It'll be the last one in December, and then it'll be Christmas, and then, you know, time to go and have a break until next year. But until then, ka kite, and thank you.
Thanks, Anna.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Aki te.